And welcome back,
To Read the Room,
A Culture Club.
a podcast by
Alexys.
Kaylin.
and Larsen.
Today, our episode is a deep dive on the romance subgenre of Bodice Rippers.
Hell yeah, brother.
Hell yeah. I wanted to start by getting into the term Bodice Ripper a bit. A lot of listeners might have heard it, but maybe we're not all familiar with exactly what counts as a bodice ripper.
Mm-hmm.
And the term itself can be a little tricky. Merriam-Webster, Old Faithful,
My side piece, Merriam-Webster.
defines the bodice ripper subgenre as historical or gothic romance, typically featuring scenes in which the heroine is subjected to violence, which is kind
Rough.
of oof. And I think that brings up a good starting point, because I know that when I first heard Bodice Ripper as like a kid, as a adolescent, in my mind, and I think this is where a lot of people's minds go, I assumed that the term referred to a fit of passion, wherein the Bodice Ripper was torn off.
There is no time.
Exactly.
Yes, I can't unlace you.
No
I
way.
must cut it off.
Which I want to point out the ridiculousness of, because bodices, one, were not easy to tear, and two, were very expensive. And on that note, no one's lifting anyone up by their corset, Jacob Elordi.
I think that should be at Emerald Fennel more than
You're right.
than Jacob. But
it's not his fault, but they definitely had Margot standing on a box.
Oh, for sure.
Beyond just the silliness of that image isn't actually entirely accurate, I think, to what this term is referring to. A lot of others see Bodice Ripper not so much as a nod to the famous sexiness of the subgenre, but instead as a reference to the historical violence, the real historical violence that was so often just a part of women's intimate lives. And that bleeds into one of the problematic things with the subgenre, which is the lack of consent. That when you're reading something in modern day is hard to have romanticized, but at the same time was a real part of women's history. And so when you think of Bodice Ripper, it is usually referring to a piece of historical romantic fiction or gothic romantic fiction. And in the seeds of the genre, there is that violent aspect, which, as we talk and analyze the works and the tropes, I'm sure we'll see how that has grown and come to fruition, but also maybe even see how modern day has evolved as those seeds have grown.
Yeah.
And because of that, people, especially romance fans, have argued that we should take Bodice Ripper out of the romance encyclopedia because it has become used to dismiss the romance genre and women's taste in books. It has become kind of derogatory. It does have...
It's like the chick flick of books.
Exactly. And it has rough origins. So definitely there's room to say, should we call these Bodice Rippers still? But at the same time, the romance genre is very, very broad. And we'll talk about some of the romance genre in broad ways, but we're really in this episode focusing on this one specific subgenre, and in calling it a Bodice Ripper subgenre is just a nod to the evolution, right? We're going to talk about the way that things change and how that history fits into the broader romance genre. So
yeah, I could absolutely see a case for renaming it or getting rid of that name, because kind of as you're saying, Bodice Ripper seems like it's a cutesy term, not the aggressiveness that it is, and maybe that's just kind of how these things have been presented to us as we've grown up in America. I mean, before doing anything for this episode, I definitely thought it was more of a fun activity, not as much of a violent.
Yeah, I know. I had this distinct memory as a child of like seeing the covers with the shirtless men or the partially unshirted men and the women, and just thinking like, oh, he can rip her bodice, but it's not totally what it's about.
No.
But let's take it two steps back and get into the history and the origin story of the subgenre.
Yeah, the history of the romance novel, I mean, romance, that's a tale as old as time, right? So the history can be taken pretty far back to like the Regency era, even back to Shakespeare.
Greek plays, like,
Yeah.
it has always existed.
Yeah.
But like what we're talking about here isn't necessarily the same.
Right. Kind of the more modern fare.
Yeah. And kind of the evolution that starts like the popularity of the Bodice Rippers begins with the mass market paperback in the 1940s. And I think that changed a lot of how Americans or the Western world reads.
Yeah, they were so much more affordable.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they were everywhere.
Yeah, just cheaper to produce. So A, they're more accessible because you could buy more, but also like cheaper to produce. Like it's
Yeah.
just easier to make them.
We got to start a tracker of how often in the history section something comes back to the printing press,
Yeah.
the publishing industry.
Yes. But the rise of the mass market paperback is really where this genre kind of starts.
If you listen to our deep dive on like space media,
Mm-hmm.
you'll see the trend. Mass market
Yes.
paperbacks really push a lot of genre fiction.
Yeah. Oh, the start of the Harlequin romance kind of begins with a specific company, which is Harlequin Enterprises, founded in 1949 in Winnipeg, Canada, by Richard Bonnycastle. That's a fun last
That's
name.
giving Scottish. It's also giving fake last name, which
Yes.
is a common pattern.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. But like to be, I mean, it very well could be fake, but like if you're the origin story basically of this genre and that's your last name, that is like perfect. That's kismet.
So Richard from his Bonny Castle creates Harlequin Enterprises, and they're a paperback reprint publisher. They kind of quickly, within a few decades, become the world's dominant romance brand.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting that they did start as like a reprinter. They weren't publishing
Yeah.
their own stories for quite a while.
Right.
Yeah.
They do eventually hit this stride with romance genre fiction specifically and intentionally marketed to women. And I find their like formula so interesting because they did these regular releases of short romances, like 200 pages or less, always a happily ever after. So there is a bit of a formula. And they figured out that women were very devoted readers.
Yeah.
If you could hook women, they would come back month after month. And so this is really where serialized romance lines of books begins because they would, like clockwork, make sure there was new book releases every month so that the women who were faithful consumers would come back time and time again.
That's a good cadence. And like if you let women read, they be reading.
Yeah, you tore through The Devil in the Castle, and now you go to the grocery store, and boom, Devil in the Glen is on the shelf. From the Devil In series. Speaking of grocery stores, we're gonna be honest, we're like not entirely sure on the initial date because we saw conflicting info as we were researching.
If you're
Archivist?
A scholar.
Hey mom, when you were growing up, when did you see romance books in the grocery store? Let us know.
Yeah, because we're not entirely sure, but
Drop it in the comments.
drop
Mom.
it in the comments if you were there in the room where it happened.
Yeah.
Somewhere along the way, after Harlequin Enterprises begins in 1949, somewhere between there and the 1970s, there is a progressive and innovative push to start selling romance books where women are already shopping.
Yeah.
There were already books being pushed in like gas stations and travel area, like bus stops and places that people frequented, newspaper stands. But
where's a woman with a budget gonna be?
the minds behind Harlequin really thought,
Mm-hmm.
where are the women?
Yeah.
Which makes so much sense because they were already seeing the consumeristic power. And in terms of economics, like the buying power usually rests with women, even though ironically at this time women would not have had a ton of control over money. Still in the US, women were barred oftentimes from having their own bank accounts and their own funds, but at the same time they were buying most of the domestic goods.
Yeah.
And so it kind of becomes, again, a genius formula. If you know that you can put the books on the grocery store shelf where the woman is going to go do the grocery shopping for the household, you know that she might set aside a couple bucks of the grocery budget that her husband is giving her to buy this month's book release. And the same thing kind of goes with department stores.
Well, it also like can be done in secret. Like
Because remember, these books were $1, $2, not 30.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, actually, Laverell Spencer, who's an author of romance novels herself, she gave a little quote recalling purchasing her first romance from a department store for $1.99 in the 70s, and she used just money from her birthday card.
Yeah.
So these were it was instrumental that these were cheap purchases with sometimes steamy material, but that women could make those purchases for themselves because
Yeah.
of the spaces they were offered in.
Yeah. As a kid, I remember seeing, and there still is some
Mhm.
books in grocery stores, but not nearly as much. But I always remember being like, these are the cheesiest looking covers. Like, who's buying these books? But people are buying them.
Yeah, and I do think that probably by the time we were children, which
Yes.
would have been in the aughts, in the 2000s, Y2K, that the grocery store hype was on the decline. But in the 1970s, that was kind of peak beginning of the genre, the subgenre of the Bodice Ripper. And we've already mentioned and alluded several times, but there is kind of a central steaminess
Yeah.
to these books.
If you still don't know what we're talking about, it's the one with Fabio on the cover. Like
Right.
it's long, luscious hair on a man and a woman and tight grasp.
Yeah, exactly. The 1970s coincides with the sexiness of the books being ramped up as well. Like, we know the Harlequin publishing begins in 1940s, carries through 50s and 60s, but those beginning serials in the 50s and 60s, they weren't always as explicit in terms of their
Sexual content.
Well, and,
Like a little more closed door.
Yes.
As a lot of
Exactly.
romance readers say now.
Yeah, well, and like, if we're being frank, you're selling it in a grocery store in the 1960s. Like, you do have to have some sort of modesty, not modesty, but like, you can't be so scandalous because you're in a grocery store in the 1960s.
More
Like,
euphemism,
yes.
you know? But then progressively from the 70s onward, with some real room of evolution in the last decade or two, the steaminess, the sexual content has been pushed further and further. And I think that I just wanted to say that kind of coincides with feminism and liberalism and progressive values. The 70s was a time of like pushback, and women were really trying to find some sexual liberation. I know that My Secret Garden, Women's Sexual Fantasies by Nancy Friday was first published in 1973, which is a landmark nonfiction work that compiled women's sexual fantasies through letters and interviews, and sparked a big public conversation about sexuality. So just kind of like this subgenre lines up with what at that time was a sexual revolution. So there is kind of a historical reason why there is sexual content.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
that birth control is making those gals real horny.
True. And in line with like just the general increase in like sexual content, there is a shift in the type of characters and themes that these books present.
Yeah.
A very famous best-selling romance novelist, Nora Roberts, said that around the turn of the 70s to the 80s, the American market was poised for change. They wanted stronger heroines, less domineering heroes, and for more contemporary themes, which already is starting to stray from what we said is like the stereotypical bodice ripper.
Yeah. There's more consent happening.
More consent, yeah. She was saying that a lot of these romance authors who are writing in the early 80s were romance readers first, growing up reading these bodice rippers. And now they feel like, okay, what we actually want to see isn't being produced.
Yeah, take it back a little.
Let's write it.
Yeah.
And yeah, this did coincide with second wave feminism and a sociological push for more sexual equality. And just the general idea of where is a woman's place?
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. So it is interesting, and we'll talk about this more later, just to think about the connection between women's lived experience within the last 50 years and this subgenre that sometimes gets reduced to a bit of a joke.
Yeah.
I will say that coinciding with women's financial independence, right? We have gained some. We've gained some financial independence.
Credit cards, bank accounts.
Women and men equally. No, but it's coinciding with some financial independence. We have seen a boom in romance-only bookstores existing. When would you guys say? I mean, to me, this feels like a last 20 years.
At least in my knowledge, which like
Yeah.
again, if you haven't caught on yet, I'm not from a large town, so I wasn't exposed to romance only bookstores.
Yeah.
Until like literally within the last 10 years, 5 years.
Yeah.
Not to say they didn't exist before, but I personally didn't realize that was a thing.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that the culture of the internet provides forums, microcosms, whatever we want to call it, for like these conversations and like the reviews and that culture. And I think that that has greatly increased since like COVID era. But I do think that the bookstore, I'm sure, is longer than just in my purview when romance has come into
Yeah.
Of course, yeah. We have a limited scope. We've only been able to see what we've been able to
Yeah.
see. But I will say, like, it seems that as a mark of the modern romance era,
Yeah.
there are now bookstores that are wholly devoted
Yeah.
to romance and to its many subgenres. That includes Bodice Rippers, like examples that we'll talk about soon. That includes dark romance, like we will talk about later in this episode and more fully in a future episode.
Yeah. Or even monster fuckers, which we'll also talk about in an upcoming episode.
Oh, stay tuned. I did want to bring up one little example because I've been and it's like the cutest store ever. But there is actually a bookstore called The Ripped Bodice. It's the namesake, and they have a location in Brooklyn and they have a location in Culver City. So shout out to them. But there's others like
Capital Books, the top floor. Is it technically a separate like?
You can check out up there. I don't know how separate it is, but it's like Naughty Novels, but with a K.
Yes.
KN.
Yeah. And
if you get it, you get it.
If you know, you know. But like even just the greater separation from everything else, like in that store specifically. But I sometimes I feel like those romance sections are ginormous in just a standard bookstore.
Yeah, exactly. There's even if it's not devoted to romance, there's usually a pretty hefty section. And just on the note of like the massive popularity of these different romance subgenres in modern day, should probably get into some of the great examples that fall into the category that we want to talk about. I think what was really interesting is that I started trying to look up like what are the hallmark, what are the pinnacle books of the Bodice Ripper subgenre. And NPR created an article in 2015 entitled Happily Ever After, 100 Swoon-Worthy Romances, where they actually put up a poll to readers to discover what romance novels would rank in said top 100. They had to close the poll down early because they got so many responses. Like everyone had an opinion.
Which is crazy, but like makes sense. There is so many of these books out there.
There's a lot of books.
Yeah.
There's a lot of books that fall just under the romance umbrella. And there's even a lot that fall under the just the Bodice Ripper umbrella. Like I remember I was in New York in April and I went to the Ripped Bodice in Brooklyn and I was like, oh, I have not read a Bodice Ripper in a long time. Let me try to buy something that feels like classically of this genre. And I went to that section of the store that wasn't even just like romance, but was like specifically it's historical. It's got the macho man on the cover. And it took me like 15 minutes. I was so overwhelmed by just choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there is literally within the specific subgenre of Bodice Ripper, I'm sure there is something for everyone. Like it is such, there's the sheer quantities are amazing.
Do you want an Earl? Do you want a pirate? Do you want a rogue?
I want a Scot.
Scots are hot. There were some early writers who kind of like set the stage that I feel like are worth pointing out. One of the big progenitors would be Austen.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Jane Austen. She's writing from within Regency era, which is an era that so many modern day Bodice Ripper authors love to like co-opt and set their stories within.
Yeah.
And then also like the Brontes, sometimes like the Gothic literature, the romance subplots. Charlotte Bronte in particular, I think probably fits that bill very well.
The interpretation of Wuthering Heights, I think. Sorry, Emerald Fennell's interpretation of Wuthering Heights, I think would also fit in there.
Yeah, it's true. Like Wuthering Heights, the book is not really Bodice Ripper, but Wuthering Heights.
Very specific what we're talking about here.
Wuthering Heights in quotes with Emerald Fennell's name under it, kind of Bodice Ripper.
Yes.
As we already mentioned, things begin to evolve in the 1970s, and probably the first book that is worth mentioning specifically is The Flame and the Flower by Kathleen E. Woodowis, and that comes out in 1972. It's kind of widely regarded as the first modern romance novel, which feels like a big title.
Yeah, and it's the first one that ever like went onto a bestseller list.
It was the 70s 50 Shades.
Well, it's like I'm interested to read like that or one of this era and see how it feels.
NPR actually, interesting enough, like left The Flame and the Flower intentionally off the aforementioned
Mm.
100 list because they cited that it no longer represented the best of the genre, which I think
Yeah.
I could, which
I get that.
that's kind of what I mean.
Yeah.
Like I'm
Yeah.
interested to see how it feels.
I went to Goodwill looking for
Yeah.
some Bodice Rippers to read for this episode, and I found one of her books. It wasn't The Flame and the Flower, but some of her others. And I went on Storygraph to look at the reviews because I wanted to see, is it going to be worth my time?
Yeah.
A lot of her books are rated poorly, and I wonder if it's because she's writing of the genre of the
Yes.
the era that's before that shift in
Yeah.
in consent and heroines that are a little bit more
She's in the old guard still.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I do kind of agree with that like the genre is changing so much, and even like something now that we consider like a bodice ripper, which wouldn't be technically a bodice ripper by the definition we gave earlier, like it is more to today's idea
Palette.
of like
Yeah.
what a romance is. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that pretty much anything we say in this episode is going to come back to that Nora Roberts quote that
Yeah.
Larsen mentioned, the idea of evolution in this subgenre and the evolution in this subgenre reflecting a greater evolution in the romance genre and the way that, you know, young writers read something, realize it's not what they want to read. They
Yeah.
write what they want to read.
Yeah.
The modern day woman has a taste that is
Yeah.
different.
Well, and especially when we're looking at that shift between the 40s to 70s and then the 80s to now, but I'm sure
Yeah.
there's shifts in between the 80s and now, really going back to that feminism and that liberation of women on so many levels. That's a pretty big divide when you're looking at the genre.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Looking at our list here of our examples, ones that we've talked about, ones that we have coming down the pipeline, I don't see any men writing these. Do men write bodice rippers, or is that
I hope
is
not.
it like an untouchable? I mean, I don't think I would want to listen to a man's or read a man's point of view on this, but
Yeah.
it is. I feel like a lot of these genres eventually do get kind of co-opted, or like somebody starts writing in the genre from the other gender and starts stirring things up. But like,
Yeah.
I guess I didn't really think about that until we started talking about them, and I'm like, these are all women. I
Yeah.
think rightfully so. It's for us by us, but
Right. I mean, I have read through several lists of like most prominent bodice
Yeah.
rippers, like in anticipation of this episode, and I haven't seen one male name. That doesn't mean it's not out there.
or that they're using a woman as the pen name.
Right, they could be. I mean,
Yeah.
notoriously, like if there's money to be made, like
Yes.
men will get their paws on it. However, I will say that I think probably, to me, bodice rippers have the same kind of feeling in the cultural zeitgeist as, say, gossip and the beauty salon,
Yeah.
in that it is for women and by women, and it's been degraded by the wider societal view as being frivolous, but really
Yes.
it is actually a source of empowerment because women are able to speak across some social divide to each other and make space for themselves in a society that doesn't want to make space for them.
Yeah.
And because of that, I would view a male author within the genre as being very much a intruder, right?
Yes. Yes.
Well, and I was while you were saying that, I was just thinking, going back to the sci-fi episode we did, like space media, a lot of those books that were written in, you know, from the 50s to 80s are taking very political issues and making them more consumable to a lot of people.
Yeah.
And while maybe on the surface the plot of a romance novel to an outsider doesn't seem like it's taking any political
depth or
stance
anything, yeah.
But to a woman, especially maybe a woman who has been around and has read these books for decades,
Yeah.
like you're gonna notice that shift, and you're gonna see these things that a man might not ever be able to pick
Yes.
up on. which means like if a man is trying to write it, he can't ever put that into his book.
Yeah. They don't have the like lived experience,
Yeah.
right? So they
Yeah.
are not going to have the nuance
Yeah.
of how that lived experience shifts over time.
It just seems like the audacity of man. There would be some.
I'm sure that someone's tried, but also
Yeah.
like as we have mentioned before and as we will get into more soon, one of the tropes and the themes that is in the old, like really heavily in the old school bodice rippers, the 70s, 80s bodice rippers, is dubious consent or lack of consent and nods to rape culture. And I do think that if a woman writes a scene where there's a lack of consent, that doesn't necessarily make it okay because it's a woman, but it does drum up like important critical questions about where does that come from?
Yeah.
What
the context?
what societal pressure or even desire or taboo?
Yeah.
But if a man does it, it's like that's gross.
Yeah.
Yeah, we kind of discussed this in our age gap relationship episode as well, but just the fact that like when a woman is writing this type of theme, where is it coming from, and is she critiquing it or is she
Promoting.
Yeah. I'm sure there are women who are promoting it, that we'll talk about that with dark romance, but it comes from a different place and a different understanding. And we also mentioned the age gap relationship. Like, is it a way to not justify but come to terms with something you're experiencing? So especially the 40s to 70s, there are a lot of domestic violence acts happening that women could do nothing about or to protect themselves.
Marital rape was still legal in
yes.
many states up until 1979.
Yeah, and that's something that still happens today.
Yeah.
Like people, I mean, I think women still in some parts of the world more than others, or some parts of America more than others, are like taught that like, no, you will have sex with your husband. Like he's your husband. Like you don't have a say in this.
So when you have a female author writing a scene that has dubious consent, is she trying to
like process?
Process it? And are the women reading it, are they trying to say, okay, like, again, justify is not the right word, but like come to terms with it, be able to live with it because they couldn't really do anything. And then like you said, 79. After that, we are seeing a huge shift.
Yeah.
And if a man was writing that, it has totally different connotations.
There's just a lack of authenticity as well. And it's like if a woman is romanticizing a scene like that, you can really step back and ask yourself why.
Yeah.
And if you're a woman reading that, you can internalize that in many, many different ways. But if a man is writing a scene like that and romanticizing it, has a rape fantasy. Like, or at least that's what it seems like because of the voice, and the voice of the author does really matter. And I will say that in reading about the subgenre of bodice rippers, even some of those earlier books in the 70s and 80s, it wasn't always that they were just a straight romanticization of violent acts against women. Like I did read that some authors would really try to use that as a vehicle to talk about living with the trauma of rape. Or that some women said when asked about why they included those scenes, they'd say, well, I'm writing historical fiction and I don't want to ignore the fact that many women throughout history have had to deal with these kinds of intimate relationships as a norm.
You don't want to misrepresent like the era necessarily either. Like
and there's still room for a lot of gray area even within those kinds of like justifications, but it is gray. It's not black and white, and I feel like it's more black and white if it's a man writing it. And to take it like slightly more modern, there are some like powerhouses of this genre that probably more modern readers will be familiar with, such as Julia Quinn of Bridgerton and other fame.
I didn't realize she had 39 books. That's a lot of books.
Bridgerton's not her only series. And in Bridgerton alone, she's got like 8 books, one for every sibling. But yeah, Julia Quinn has 39 books. The Bridgerton series is her most popular. As of 2023, over 17 million Bridgerton books had been sold in the US alone. And these are pretty traditional bodice rippers. They take place in Regency era England. Some of the tropes that we've already talked about are present in the books, and we can talk about that more in a bit. But she's kind of like a powerhouse. She's a big example, mostly because obviously we know Bridgerton has been co-opted by Netflix and Shondaland, and therefore has become really prominent in cultural conversation in the last few years. So she's one example.
Yeah, another huge, I would say, presence in this space in modernity is Diana Gabaldon, who I think has exclusively written in the Outlander series. I was trying to, maybe not, maybe there's more outside of Outlander, but
her main is Outlander.
Yeah, that's
fame.
the most prolific of hers, and there's a lot of those books too.
Yeah.
Also has been turned into a TV series as well.
Yeah, again, like very popular in the zeitgeist because of the adaptation, but wanted to shout her out because my boyfriend loves Outlander, so he owes a lot to Diana. Big Scottish
I was like, yeah,
hero.
I love Jamie. I don't know if I love Outlander.
Somebody else that I don't know if this would fall under traditional bodice ripper, but somebody who like you see everywhere.
Yeah.
Danielle Steele.
Yes.
And apparently she has written over 210 books.
Wow.
That's crazy.
Is it like what's that male author that's James Patterson? Is it like James Patterson where it's like other people are writing it under her name?
Or is it like Stephen King where she's just doing a lot of cocaine?
Yeah.
I think it's just her. Okay, what I'm seeing is like this is her.
Wow, I was gonna say she's got free time, but it's like her job, I guess.
It is her job.
No, but I love that for her because people say you can't be a full-time writer.
How old is she?
Maybe you're just not writing the right
She's 78.
Wow.
She's been doing it for a minute.
Yeah.
Queen.
Yeah, I haven't read any of her books. I wouldn't necessarily say I think she's in the Bodice Ripper category.
Yeah.
But she is a romance author that you find everywhere.
Yeah, prolific.
Yeah. Then we have Lisa Kleypas. She publishes, again, those traditional kind of almost like airport style romances, pretty cheap books to buy, but hugely successful. Books translated into over 40 languages. That's a commonality across all of these like women that we're naming in the kind of modern powerhouse category is they all have sold a shit ton of books. Like, take how many books you think they've sold and quadruple it.
Yeah. Well, and like the Outlander ones, those are thick books. Too. Yeah. Those are big boys.
They're kind of meaty, yeah. And they're covering a wide swath of time. Like, they just keep them going.
Yeah.
I didn't look up the credentials, I will say, of every authorstress on this list, but on Lisa's website I noticed that she had her degree in political science listed, and I thought that was so interesting just because of the broader conversation about the kind of like trashiness of Bodice Rippers.
Yeah, but there's like educated women, like it's
there's an intellectual voice from behind these books, and I think that if you actually like read them and think about them, you can hear that intellectual voice.
Also though, like even if they're not super intellectual, like we all contain multitudes. Like it's it's not bad to have your chocolate cake book. Like it's not and there's plenty of things in like the manosphere that are equivalent that do not get as much shit as like rom-coms and Bodice Rippers and
and also like we can't all be reading Immanuel Kant like all the time. Like,
I can only read so many Count of Monte Cristos a year.
I like one. I thought it was really interesting on that idea of like the intellectualism that some of these authors are actually approaching these sometimes puffy books from. Kleypas also has like an opening quote on her website, which is really interesting. Like when you go to her website, before you can look at anything, a quote appears on the screen, and it's "Women helped shape the world we live in. History left them out."
I really like that.
Yeah, I think
like
that's
too.
so cool.
Yeah.
Like, and it kind of immediately before you get to like, what book she's released recently and staying up to date with her blog, it does kind of make you stop and think. And I think that is a beautiful way to frame these narratives. Speaking of these narratives, in case you're like super, super not familiar, I did want to, just for entertainment purposes, read some book descriptions so we can really like situate ourselves in what these women are writing. So one of Kleypas's successful books is Devil in the Winter from the Devil series. I don't think that's what it's actually called, but all the books have devil in the title. So Devil in the Winter. And here is like the book jacket description. Desperate to escape her scheming relatives, Evangeline Jenner has sought the help of the most infamous scoundrel in London. A marriage of convenience is the only solution. No one would have ever paired the shy, stammering wallflower with the sinfully handsome Viscount.
Oh.
It quickly became clear, however, that Evie is a woman of hidden strength, and Sebastian desires her more than any woman he's ever known.
Sexy.
Even just names like really send me.
Yes.
Of course,
yeah.
of course.
Evangeline
He's
Jenner.
Sebastian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she's got a cute little nickname,
Mhm.
Evie.
Yeah, Evie.
Yeah. You have to have a pet name for your sexy Scottish man to call you.
Absolutely.
Like Sassenach in Outlander.
I am currently reading When a Scot Ties the Knot by Tessa Dare, who's another prominent author in the kind of modern Bodice Ripper writers category.
Mhm.
There's exactly that little the Scottish affectionate language. The main male character calls Maddie Mulcrea, which means my heart. I think is a fun little hallmark just to note of a lot of these books.
You know, bitches are hoes for like Gaelic though. Or bitches are hoes. Bitches are hoes.
Our hoes.
Bitches are hoes for Gaelic.
And on the Scottish trope, on the Scottish thing, there's just so many. There's so many in the Bodice Ripper category. We've
Yeah.
already talked about Outlander. Then there's also books like A Scot in the Dark by Sarah McLean, which was
The puns. The puns are so strong.
Okay, first of all, why do Bodice Ripper writers love a preposition so much? There's so many, which is like in the dark, in
Yeah.
the winter, on the train, in the castle, on the hilltop. Like,
Yeah.
I don't-
Well, you got your person and you got where they are, and that's telling you a lot about the
You know
the
what I like
book.
about the namings though is that so much of it is like the formula for a Bodice Ripper name is some kind of a reference to a man,
Mhm.
a Scot, a viscount, a
The
duke,
devil.
the devil, a rogue, a scoundrel, and then the preposition. So it's like a Scot in the dark, the count in the castle.
A viscount over a table.
Exactly. And you know what that does? It objectifies the man.
Yeah.
The man is the
And
object
you know
that
what?
the woman is getting.
Hell yeah,
Well,
brother.
hell yeah, brother. Sarah McLean was the last kind of like quintessential Bodice Ripper author that I was going to throw out there, and I will read you one more book jacket, which is for A Scot in the Dark, just because I love him so much. Miss Lillian Hargrove has lived much of her life alone in a gilded cage, longing for love and companionship.
Companionship.
You wrote companionship, but
Companionship. That's the accelerated version of companionship. That's the lustful companionship. Companionship.
Longing for love and companionship. When an artist offers her pretty promises and begs her to pose for a scandalous portrait, Lily doesn't hesitate until the lying libertine leaves her in disgrace. With the painting now public, Lily has no choice but to turn to the one man who might save her from ruin, Highland devil turned half-hearted duke.
Wow. It's a devil Scot too?
Yeah, it's
Wow.
a 2-for-1. He's the devil and he's Scottish.
Wow.
Take me now.
This is
and he's a duke.
titillizing.
Damn, triple threat. This is my next read. That should give you a good idea of some of the big names that are out there in this space, and some of the patterns even that just those women have started to create or to add to. But there's like a bigger conversation to be had here in terms of just the broad themes or tropes that these works touch on, and then the tendrils that kind of spread out from there into other literary spaces and the romance genre as a whole. If we do start to kind of look at these stories more broadly and start to pick apart the patterns that are important and what those kind of like establish in looking at the evolution of romance subgenres, there's a few things that we can kind of get into.
Yeah. I feel like if you've never read one of these stories, you've seen the dramatic cover, the clinch cover of a man holding a woman with, like, I mentioned that a little bit earlier with the Fabio of it all, but like it's always at least one impassioned person, if not two, on that cover that look like they are about to penetrate each other.
And I think outside of just the like advertising,
Yes.
they all follow very, very similar things.
Mm-hmm.
What is central to the plot is the romance.
Yes.
Right.
We're not getting plot heavy books here.
No.
There is one storyline we're following.
There's not a lot of world building.
Yeah. But, you know, that's not what we're here for.
No.
Right.
We're here for the enemies to lovers, the friends to lovers, the forced proximity, the one bed in the tavern, the Cinderella story, all these classic tropes that are rife within Bodice Rippers, but also
Just
all
general
romance,
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
broader than romance, right? It's
Yeah.
they're good plot devices.
Yeah, the these kind of like romance tropes that show up in the romance genre, that show up in wider works, just because they work as romance tropes, super, super heavy prevalence in the Bodice Rippers as well. One thing that I think is so funny, I have admittedly not read any Bridgerton books, but Julia Quinn has it so that each Bridgerton sibling is an example of, did you guys know this, is an example of a different classic trope.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So like the one that is
Anthony and Kate are enemies to lovers.
Yeah. Daphne and the Duke that she goes for, whose name is escaping me, are fake dating.
Penelope and Colin are friends to lovers.
So there she's doing tropes to the max.
Yeah.
She's owning it.
And I think something just to note, like a tropey book does not mean it's a bad book.
Oh,
No.
Especially like in romance novels, like these tropes exist for a reason.
Yeah, and I also, if you're like Bridgerton, if you're aware of the trope, you're using the trope. It's not just playing into, it's like playing on it. It's yeah.
I'll say shamelessly, like an enemies to lovers story really gets me.
Yeah.
I like that.
Me too. The only trope that, well, I won't say the only trope, but the one trope that I will not stand for, the pregnancy trope. Get that out of here.
Can you elaborate on exactly what you mean by that?
It's where the main character, the main female character, ends up either getting like accidentally pregnant, or like it's more integral to the plot where like at the beginning, like the female main character gets pregnant by a different guy, and then the other guy comes and saves her.
Yeah, he's like abusive or whatever, and then this guy's coming to save her from the situation.
Or the guy that she was just hooking up with, oh, oops, accidental pregnancy. Get that out of here.
Get that out of here.
When I read The One Bed, I was like, that's in like every fantasy novel. I feel like that has a slight bit of romance.
No, they have to stop over at the tavern, and there's only one room left.
Yeah.
I'll just sleep on the floor.
Yeah.
But it's so cold.
And then she feels bad that he's sleeping on the floor.
And something that like is very common in these bodice rippery contemporary romance, whatever, you don't often get as much slow burn.
No.
Because these books are short.
Right.
You can't fit a
you
slow
gotta
burn.
go.
So, you know, the quick marriage, whatever we can get to the spice quickest,
yes,
is how we're getting there.
Yeah, because there is still like the veil of propriety in a lot of these books, because they are historical fiction, where it's like if they're fucking before marriage, like they have to get to the marriage quick, or else something bad is gonna happen, or there has to wait for there to be the spicy content until there's been a marriage. And so one thing I noticed when I was even just reading the book jacket summaries of a lot of books is like marriage is often the starting point. Like the hasty marriage is a really common trope in these stories.
Yeah, as you guys are mentioning that, I'm thinking, in Outlander, they get married like in the show in the first season, like a couple episodes in, and like a lot of the marriages are like for a reason, right? It might not be love is the primary thing.
Marriage of convenience.
Yes, convenience, protection, whatever. And I mean that is a huge, vast series, and they get married, boom, right off the bat.
Yeah,
can't give them time to think over the decision.
No, marry that hot Scot.
I've never read the Bridgerton books, but at least in the show, that is in some ways more slow burn. You have to watch a couple episodes before you get to the real spice. You get some of that sexual tension, but you don't get the spice.
Yeah.
But having not read the books,
I don't know how that works
out in terms of like what percentage you get through before it happens.
Yeah. When does the sex come?
But as we kind of discussed earlier, talking about like the shifts from 70s to 80s, there might not have been flat out explicit sex scenes.
Yeah. Cut to the curtains in the room style.
Yeah, closed door romance, or like cut like fade to black.
Yeah.
A little more popular because we as a society weren't as open.
Yeah, sexually forward.
That's not as much the case these days.
Right.
Yeah, you can walk into any old bookstore and see some pretty hardcore stuff that's just like on the first shelf when you walk in.
I know, mom.
Wop, wop, wop. And I mean, obviously, we are a much more phrased society. There's people there, like, obviously, sex work has always been a thing and is what they say is like the oldest industry, job, whatever.
Occupation.
Yes. But we're so much less prudish than the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, and like definitely different like elements of sexuality.
So we're kind of going full circle.
No, I was getting there. Yeah, the trad wife,
Not the horseshoe.
Project 2025 of it all is making that a little rough out here. But you can find some pretty crazy things pretty quickly in any bookstore these days.
Yeah.
Yeah, nowadays things tend to lean more towards the direct or erect.
But that really has just kind of like pushed the genre forward, and some might say expanded its options, opportunities, and then we get even more themes, I guess you could say.
Well, and it leads. It's led to the creation and inspiration of other genres and other genres that are specifically for women, and whether that's just within the romance category or broader categories. These books have done a lot of the laying the groundwork for different genres.
Gets people talking and just women's desire scene.
Yeah. But unfortunately, there are some more problematic ones that have somehow stuck around for way too long.
Way too long.
Yeah.
I think, not to beat the dead horse, but if
Which
you...
one?
I was going to start with, if you haven't listened to our age gap part 1 and part 2 episodes, please do, because as a part of that phenomenon, unfortunately, is Bodice Rippers.
Yeah.
Which have like historically included really wide age gap relationships. I think that I read that in The Flame and the Flower, there is like a 17-year age gap between the main characters.
What's the age gap in Outlander? Because it's reverse.
Yeah, she is older than he is, but I don't know if it's maybe like 10 years. But I mean, like, she's from the future, so is that different?
Is he actually older than her because she's...
Because he's dead and in the grave? Claire Fraser is 4 to 5 years older than Jamie.
I thought it was way older than that.
Well, but I think that, she's a modern woman. And like in the show, probably in the book, there's like a scene very early on where she's like, I'm going to teach you how to fuck.
But I think, I think Outlander is a good example of how there has been some evolution.
Yeah.
Like those big age gaps are less prevalent nowadays. And I actually think that part of the sexiness of Outlander is the fact that Claire is a little bit older and a little bit more mature than Jamie, even if it's just a pinch. But at the same time, you still got to acknowledge that a lot of the books that really started this subgenre rely on the age gap and the power imbalance it creates.
Yeah.
And another one, just that physical size difference.
Yes, which I think Outlander, great example of that. Like, she's the petite little Claire, and he's this huge, burly warrior Scotsman. Like,
yeah. And even in When a Scot Ties the Knot, the main protagonist, like, it's startled me how often she is hyper frequently described as a small, dainty thing that the gruff Scottish war captain just can't help but want to protect.
Yeah. It's so frustrating that is a theme that plays out like across genres. It's everywhere.
It's both infantilizing and terrible for women's body image.
Yes. Well, then there's also this, I think specifically in a lot of fantasy novels, but this kind of happens in Outlander, is that they're also like trying to teach the girls how to protect themselves, like teaching them like combat. But it's like, this is a dainty woman, and you're going to have her like fighting up like Scotsmen, like what,
Mhm.
like you can't have both. And I think that goes back into, and we've talked about this in other podcast episodes, but like the Sarah J Massiverse, like there's a lot of like this dainty human is now in this different realm and is like this warrior, and those don't feel like
Or if she is like, oh, I'm gonna make my female main character really strong and athletic and can do whatever, then the male main character is then even bigger and even stronger and even it's like, okay.
Yeah, now he's the biggest, baddest fairy, not
Yeah.
just like a big fairy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there has to be some sizable size difference.
Yeah. I want giant woman, petite man.
And while frustrating as the physical size gap
Mhm.
is, there is a different theme trope, whatever you want to call it, that is actually like really, really bad and insidious.
Yeah.
And that's rape and consent, you know, or lack of consent.
Yeah, we've been dancing around and by this kind of the whole episode so far. We've already mentioned it a couple times, but a trope that unfortunately is really central to the origins of the Bodice Ripper is lack of consent.
Mhm.
And from the very first Merriam-Webster definition is violence against women. I was like kind of startled to read the term dubcon. I'd never heard that before. And then I was reading about Bodice Rippers and saw it and was like, what's that? It stands for dubious consent. Like that is prevalent enough in the genre that there is like a
A
little
cute nickname.
dubcon. Tag dubcon.
But we have already discussed it, and I feel like it would be best to like even talk about some of the positives, the good things that have come out.
For sure. Yeah, because there has been evolution. Like we can talk about the origins, we could talk about what's problematic, but at the end of the day, where the subgenre and broader romance genre stand now are different. So there's been some positive shifts, such as how in the early days of Bodice Rippers, there were some historical issues that authors might have been using in their settings, such as romanticizing the pre-Civil War era South. People don't really do that as much in the 21st century versions. We've now learned that we've now kind of learned that lesson. And then also a more positive shift that we've already mentioned, but that's really worth noting again, is the way that women are always central to the plot, but modern writers stress more and more of the independence of their protagonists or try with greater frequency to write strong female characters.
Little substance to him.
And I think we've already referenced just like how prolific romance in general is. Like even, you know, Bodice Rippers for sure, but just romance as an entire genre. And it's interesting that like it's often referred to as a recession-proof genre. Like women drive the industry so much, and we are always craving these stories that even right now in this hellscape we live in, romance is still flying off the shelves.
Yeah, and maybe even more. I mean, like in a time of financial and political scariness, you kind of latch onto the smaller things that are more accessible. But in our pre-talk, Alexys had mentioned the lipstick effect, and do you want to kind of put words to that? And then
The lipstick effect or the lipstick index is just a term economists coined for the phenomenon of sales of small scale luxury goods during times of economic recession. Like lipstick sales will actually go up during times of economic recession because it's this small treat that you can get yourself.
I can't go to Paris, so I'm gonna get a lipstick and a Bodice Ripper, and we're gonna read it in the park.
Yeah, exactly. And because we've already talked about the accessibility oftentimes of the Bodice Ripper throughout the last 50 years, it makes sense that that would fall under that lipstick index.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I think that because these books are so prolific and they are recession proof, they're an easy cash grab, which kind of plays into the Netflixification of a lot of romance books. Not just Bodice Rippers, but we can see that very obviously in Outlander, in Bridgerton. Just because Netflix isn't making the show, by the way, doesn't mean that it's not falling under the phenomenon, right? But also things like The Summer I Turned Pretty, People We Meet on Vacation, To All the Boys I've Loved Before. In that broader romance genre,
Mm-hmm.
we're seeing a rise in awareness in the cultural zeitgeist because producers, directors, writers already know that romance sells.
Mhm.
Yeah.
People are entertained. People want these stories, and so they're an easy place to go for adaptation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And they're usually pretty straightforward stories. Like they're not overly like some fantasy series are so hard to get adaptations because
Mhm.
there's so much going on. It would cost so much. But like most of these are a little bit of a costume budget, a little bit of a location budget. Like we're not doing any CGI. Like they're pretty easy to, I mean, not easy to produce. There's less moving parts than other
Mhm.
genres.
Yeah, that's such a good point. Like a high fantasy, like you're going to have a very stuffed plot.
Mhm.
You're going to have a lot of moving parts. You're going to have intense world building. You
Mhm.
can get some of the appeal of that in a historical fiction Bodice Ripper. Take your audience to a different place
Mhm.
and a different time
Mhm.
without having so many hills to climb.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like, there's time travel in Outlander. It's just, I mean, it's not like crazy set differences. It's like there's rocks and then she's in a different time. Like, it's not that crazy of like CGI or anything like that.
And I think too, like, obviously, we know that romance as a genre sticks around. It's not going
Mhm.
anywhere. And we know that women drive this market.
Mhm.
But I feel like more recently, where a big push is coming from is places like Book Talk.
Yeah.
And like it's a space for women to discuss these books more openly,
Mhm.
Yeah.
but it's also a place for these higher ups to see what trends are happening. Like
Yeah.
people we meet on vacation, the summer I turn pretty, some of that stuff like maybe would not have happened had Book Talk, Bookstagram,
Mhm.
whatever
Yeah.
taken off.
Because
Yeah.
there's a proven audience then
Mhm.
Mhm.
online that people can see. And oftentimes I feel like those execs, those bigwigs, they don't know what people actually want.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And so there is kind of a power in the book talk romance space to one, provide women with this internet style contained environment that feels somewhat safe where they can talk about the books they're reading,
Mhm.
but two, is visible to other people and does say, hey, we like this.
Mhm.
And like in a kind of way that's very empowering too for
Mhm.
a genre with all of its subgenres that's traditionally been kind of like belittled. I do think that book talk is adding back some power to women in
Mhm.
saying like, we know what you think about these genres and we like them anyways.
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
not ashamed. Like
Yeah.
I'm going to read it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh. I'm not ashamed. I'm gonna read it and I'm gonna do an analysis and a review and have a
Mhm.
conversation about it.
Yeah.
And there is more, like, I feel like most things you can read into or not into as much as you want. Like
Mhm.
you can really go into an in-depth analysis about like how your author is talking about certain things, or you can just read the romance book and have an enjoyable time reading the romance book.
Yeah.
And either is okay.
Yeah.
Like it's okay to not think critically about every entertaining thing you read. It's also okay to take something that people see as just entertainment
Mhm.
and to say, no, what if I do think about this critically?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Each side of the coin is fine. And I do think that when you start to look at it that way, you do see this really cool, symbiotic almost lineage in the romance space
Mhm.
that is built by women for
Mhm.
women that
Mhm.
women then change. And when there's a critique, it's coming from women.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when there's an audience, it's going to women. Like that is a cool web. I even think about like, not that I necessarily like this book, but like It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover
Yeah.
and the Colleen Hooverification of things.
Yes.
I know I've used ification so many times. But it's not a bodice ripper. It doesn't fall into that subgenre.
Mhm.
But is there a foundation that was laid by Harlequin romance and by Bodice Rippers? Is there a way in which Colleen Hoover's toe is dipped in that pool?
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I was just thinking like my own reading preference. Like in 2024, I read one book I would consider like in a romance genre.
Sure.
In 2025, I read 17.
Yeah.
And it was like I got a taste for it, and I realized, oh, this is actually fun.
Yeah.
I do like
Yeah.
this. And I think, after doing this more deep dive on the genre, I want to read more. And I want
Yes.
to read the ones that even like previously I would have been like, oh no, that is kind of trashy.
Yes.
Because it does stem from women. It does stem from feminism and our ability to even write books, but just like to speak to our own issues.
Yeah.
And these are literally by women for women.
Mhm.
Like, it makes me want to, I'm going to read more. I'm
Mhm.
going to read, maybe this year I'll read 20. Maybe next year I'll read 30.
Yeah. Do you think this year you're gonna read Lights Out by Nevessa
No.
Allen?
No, not that one.
Which to mention that book, I think that that there's a direct lineage from the Bodice Ripper to that style of book, the kind of darker fantasy as well. Um it touches on the, what was it, dubcon, dubious consent.
Yeah.
Like it does have some of those elements, and whether those are productive elements in our current culture, not sure. But there's definitely a through line between the original Bodice Ripper to these dark romances.
Yeah, dark romance and Bodice Rippers, they're not the same, but
Mhm.
they got a strong connection. So clearly something about these kinds of stories is central to the experience of being a woman. And even speaking on that more broadly, I think that, we were throwing out some names of contemporary romance
Mhm.
writers who are
Mhm.
in ways connected to this very specific subgenre that we've been talking about.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, like the Nora Roberts quote we said earlier, it just keeps evolving. So like
Yeah.
what we have right now that is considered true contemporary romance, that's not the same as a Bodice Ripper.
Yeah.
But it exists because of that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And authors like Abby Jimenez, Emily Henry, they're huge in the
Yes.
romance genre right now. Would they even be here without the likes of Kathleen Woodiwiss?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Know who came before you?
I think that there's like a real trickle down effect. I mean, in all literature, but it's special to look at it in the way of womanhood. What I really come back to in my mind is the part in the Nora Roberts quote where she speaks about the romance writers reading
Mhm.
reading romance first, reading what was out there,
Mm-hmm.
and then writing what they wanted to read from that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I know that dark romance and bodice rippers and even some of the contemporary romance we've mentioned, it's not for young girls, but like my heart does go to a place of like, well, they're watching and they know.
Mhm.
There's high school girls all
Yeah.
over Book Talk.
Yes.
The Summer I Turned Pretty, To All the Boys I've Loved Before, those are blending into young adult fiction. And I think that that's part of what makes looking at the evolution of something like Bodice Rippers really cool,
Mm-hmm.
because it does come from a place of generations of women
Yeah.
evolving themselves. And I'm curious to see where that trickle down will go.
Yeah. Where when we're the women being called upon by the young podcasters
Mhm.
in 50 years from now, asking us when these things started happening.
Where will they
Yeah.
take
Yeah.
it? Who are
Where will they be?
who will their Fabios be?
Yeah. I do really hope that this genre continues to push back on the pressures of society and our current politics. And
Yeah.
I hope we don't wrap back around to kind of
Yes.
where we've started.
Yeah.
Right.
And I really do want to know, will Scots always be hot?
Probably.
Okay. So we definitive answer, yes.
Yes.
Okay.
It's I've already had the thought as we've been recording that like part of the title of this episode will be a lot of hot Scots.
Yeah, I keep thinking about Scott's tots.
A little different.
That's very different. Except he makes false promises, and that's exactly what society gives women.
It always goes back to the patriarchy. Thank you guys so much for listening.
We'll hope you keep reading the room with us.
So keep checking back for more episodes every Monday and Thursday that dive into the spaces where literature, media, and culture meet.
Please reach out to us at readtheroom@gmail.com for feedback and topic suggestions.
Follow us on Instagram and TikTok at readtheroom_culture club for the most up-to-date podcast information.
If you enjoy our podcast, please leave us a 5-star review wherever you listen.
Please give us some recommendations
Yes.
of your favorite Bodice Rippers, contemporary romance, for Kaylin, some dark romance maybe.
And remember to take up space in whatever room you're in, especially if there's only one bed.
Bye.
Bye.